Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today, we're all about getting those pro-level vocal recordings. And you know what that means.
Microphones.
Yep. Specifically, those made to capture the magic of the human voice.
Ah, the human voice. There's nothing quite like it.
Right. And whether you're like dreaming of setting up a home studio or just curious about, the tech behind those amazing vocals you hear on your favorite tracks, well, today's the day we break it all down.
Let's do it.
Our guide for this deep dive, an article called, wait for it, The World's Best Mic for Recording Vocals, 2024 edition.
Catchy?
But here's the thing, though, right? It's not just about finding a quote-unquote good mic.
Hmm.
It's got to be the right mic for your voice in your recording setup.
That's where the real magic happens,
Yeah.
Understanding the nuances can take your recordings from good to like, wait, how did they do that?
That's what we're going for. And the article kicks off with 5 key factors to consider, which is a perfect roadmap for us today. First up, frequency range.
Highs and lows a mic can hear, right?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
crucial for capturing like the full spectrum of a voice.
Yeah.
So if you're recording a singer with a really deep voice, you need a mic that can catch those low frequencies. But if you're recording a soprano hitting those high notes, well, you need a mic with a much wider range.
Some mics specialize, others are more versatile. That's one of the first big choices you'll make.
Then there's sensitivity, which sounds pretty simple, how well it picks up sound. But then we get to polar patterns, and that's where things get interesting, especially if you've ever dealt with like room noise.
Oh yeah, room noise can be a real killer.
Right. Imagine you're trying to record in a room and there's like a noisy air conditioner humming in the background.
I've been there.
A mic with a wide polar pattern, it'll pick up everything. Your voice, the AC, maybe even like your neighbor's dog barking 3 houses down.
You're painting quite the picture.
But a mic with a tighter, more focused pattern, like the common cardioid pattern, which is shaped like a heart that'll zero in on your voice and minimize all that extra noise.
Especially important if you're not recording in like a super treated studio.
Exactly. Which, let's be honest, most of us aren't. Then there's detail and clarity, which is about those nuances, those little things that make a vocal performance special. Think of the difference between a recording that's crisp and clear, you can hear every breath, every inflection, versus one that sounds muddy or muffled.
Night and day.
Right.
Yeah.
The right mic can really bring a vocal performance to life. And then we've got coloration, which sounds a bit mysterious.
A little bit, yeah. It's like, well, some mics have a built-in tone. They might sound warm, bright, somewhere in between. And that can either enhance your natural voice or maybe clash with it.
So like a warm mic might be good for a naturally bright voice to add some depth, and a bright mic might bring out the clarity in a softer voice.
Exactly. It's about finding the right match. And that's where listening tests are super helpful. Hear how different mics interact with different voices.
And last but not least, we've got the big one, budget. This can be a deal breaker, especially if you're just getting started.
Luckily, there are some great mics out there at every price point.
It is lucky.
The key is research, research, research. Find the best value for your needs. You might be surprised at the quality you can get, even with a tighter budget.
Now, before we get to the specific mics they recommend, the article has a few self-assessment questions, which I love. This is where things get personal, right? Like, how quiet is your recording space?
Important question.
Right. Or will you be using the same mic to record instruments? If your space isn't perfectly quiet, you'll want to pay close attention to things like noise rejection and those polar patterns we talked about.
Makes sense. And if you're planning to use the same mic for vocals and instruments, you need something versatile.
Right.
A mic that's great for capturing soft vocals might not handle a screaming electric guitar.
Ooh, good point. And here's another one they ask. Are you looking for something versatile across different voices or tailored to your specific voice?
That's a big one, especially if you're recording multiple singers or if you're a vocalist who really wants to capture that unique sound you've got.
I'm hearing a theme here. Like choosing a mic is all about knowing your needs and priorities. No single best mic out there, just the best one for what you're doing.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, let's talk mic types. We've all heard dynamic and condenser thrown around, but what's the actual difference and why should we care?
Picture this. You're at a rock concert, the lead singer's belting it out. That mic they're practically swallowing. Most likely a dynamic mic.
Those things are tough.
They're built to handle loud sounds without distorting, less sensitive to room noise too. Perfect for live shows.
So that's why they're like the go-to on stage. Makes sense. But wait, if they're good for loud sounds, why aren't they the standard for studio vocals too?
That's where condenser microphones come in. They're the detail-oriented specialists.
Yeah.
Super sensitive, can capture the nuance, the wider frequency range of the human voice, but they need a more controlled environment.
So condenser mics are like high-definition cameras capturing every detail, and dynamic mics are the action cameras built for tough conditions.
Love that analogy. It's about choosing the right tool for the job. You want that rich, detailed vocal performance. And you're in a treated studio. Condenser mic is probably your best bet.
But if you're in a less than ideal space, or dealing with really loud sounds,
Dynamic mic might be the way to go.
this is making so much more sense now. Okay, so now that we, get the basic mic types, let's see how that applies to the mics recommended in the article. I'm really curious about this Rode NT1.
The overall best,
Yeah.
according to the article.
Yeah, Rode's a good brand, but what makes this one stand out? There are so many mics out there.
Well, the NT1 seems to hit that sweet spot, quality, versatility, and the price isn't bad either. It's known for that clean, detailed sound, kind of bright, which can be really nice for vocals.
Right, huh?
Yeah, some people describe it that way. But here's the cool part. It's also great for recording acoustic guitar.
Ooh, so a singer-songwriter's dream mic.
Pretty much. 2-for-1 deal.
I like it. But they also give a special mention to the Shure SM7B, which is interesting because it's a dynamic mic. I always thought for studio vocals, you go condenser.
It's true, condensers are more common, but the SM7B, it's kind of a secret weapon. It's got this richness, this warmth to the sound. People compare it to classic recordings, and it's amazing at noise rejection.
So if your recording space isn't perfect,
The SM7B can really help you out. Get a clean, professional sound, even if your room isn't totally treated.
that's good to know because my room, definitely not perfect. All right, let's talk about this AKG C414 XLTI, their premium pick. This thing has 9 different polar patterns. Is that even necessary? Seems a bit overkill.
Well, yeah, 9 might seem like a lot, but it gives you so much control. You can use the C414 for pretty much anything. Solo vocals, a full band, you name it. And you can adjust that polar pattern to fit exactly what you're doing.
So it's an investment, but it's the kind of mic that could, grow with you
Yeah.
as you get more serious about recording.
Exactly. It's a workhorse. But if you're on a budget, they recommend the AKG C214. Basically, it's the C414's little sibling. Still great mic.
So what are we losing by going with the budget option?
You still get that classic AKG sound, that bright, detailed vibe. You might not have all the fancy features of the Big Brother, but it's still a huge step up from your typical entry-level mic.
Okay, makes sense. And then there are the true budget champs, the Audio-Technica AT2020, which everyone seems to recommend for starters. What makes this one so popular?
The AT2020. It's it consistently punches above its weight class. Really good sound for the price.
The article does mention it's sensitive, though, and doesn't have a shock mount. What does that mean for people new to recording?
So a shock mount, it basically isolates the mic from vibrations, which can cause those low rumbles in your recordings. And since the AT2020 is so sensitive, it might pick up more of that.
So it's extra important to pay attention to your recording environment with this one.
Yeah, might want to invest in a separate shock mount, just to be safe.
Makes sense. And what about the Aston Origin? That one seems to be getting a lot of hype lately. What makes it stand out from the other budget options?
The Origin.
Mm.
It's a good example of a company, really trying something different. The design is unique, and it has this really smooth, detailed sound, great for vocals, and it actually comes with the shock mount built in.
Oh, smart. They already solved one of the potential problems.
Exactly.
And last but not least, we got to talk about the Shure SM58 again. I know we talked about it earlier, but the article actually suggests it can be good in the studio too, not just live. That surprised me.
Yeah, the SM58, it's a legend on stage, right? But that warm sound it has, it can be really cool for certain vocal styles in the studio, especially if you're going for that classic rock and roll vibe.
So, even though it's known for live performance?
It can hold its own in a studio setting, especially if you're into that warmer sound.
And it's tough. If you're a little rough on your gear, this thing can take it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And if you gig a lot, it's nice to have one mic that can do both, right?
Makes sense. All right, we've talked about all these amazing mics, but I want to circle back to polar patterns. We touched on them earlier, but I think they deserve more attention. Can you break it down for people who are newer to recording?
Of course. Choosing the right polar pattern can seriously affect your recordings. It's imagine you're looking down at the mic from above. The polar pattern shows you where the mic is picking up sound from. You'll often see diagrams, which are super helpful.
I'm a visual learner, so those diagrams are everything. What are some of the most common patterns we might see when recording vocals?
The most common is cardioid, shaped like a heart. It mostly picks up sound from the front, a little from the sides, and almost nothing from behind.
So it's good for isolating your voice, like we talked about earlier.
Exactly. If you're singing directly into a cardioid mic, it's going to focus on you and minimize sounds coming from behind you, like computer fans, street noise, that kind of thing.
Okay, so if my recording space isn't a soundproof booth, which it definitely isn't, cardioid is a good choice to minimize those unwanted noises.
You got it. Now, another common one is omnidirectional. Picks up sound equally from all directions.
Wait, why would you want that?
Well, it's good if you want to capture the sound of the space. It creates this more natural ambient feel. But if you're in a noisy environment, it's not ideal.
So omnidirectional is good if you want that room sound, but cardioid is the way to go if you just want the voice.
Exactly. Then you've got figure eight, which picks up from the front and back, but not the sides.
Why would you ever need that?
Well, it can be useful for recording duets, with two singers facing each other, or for certain stereo techniques.
Huh, interesting. And there are even more specialized ones, right? Like hypercardioid, supercardioid. What are those all about?
Those are like extra focused cardioids, rejecting even more sound from the sides. They're good for really isolating a sound, especially in noisy environments.
So it's all about choosing the right tool for the job. Understanding these patterns seems super important for getting a clean, professional sound.
Couldn't agree more. And don't be afraid to experiment. Try recording the same thing with different patterns just to hear the difference. You might be surprised.
That's a good tip. It's all about learning by doing, right? But even with the perfect mic and polar pattern, that's just part of it. There's more to getting a great vocal recording than just the mic itself, right?
Absolutely. You could have the most expensive mic in the world, but if your technique is bad or your recording space is terrible, it's not going to matter much.
So, like, what else should we be thinking about?
Well, let's start with mic placement. You've got your mic, you picked your pattern, now what?
Do you just stand there and sing, like you would on stage?
Not quite. Where you position yourself and the mic, it makes a huge difference. How far you are, the angle, even the height of the mic. It all changes the sound.
Wow, so it's more than just pointing it at your mouth.
Way more. Some voices sound amazing up close, really intimate and detailed. Others need some space to breathe, to develop that natural resonance. And the angle. Singing slightly off axis can actually smooth out some harsh frequencies.
Mind blown. So are there any tools or tricks we should know about when it comes to mic placement?
Oh yeah. One essential tool is a pop filter.
Pop filter, that sounds kind of explosive.
It's for plosives, actually.
Explosives.
Yeah, those bursts of air when you say certain letters like P and B sounds.
Yeah.
Try saying top. You feel that puff of air?
Oh, yeah.
Those can hit the mic and cause these nasty pops and clicks in your recordings.
Ugh, yeah, I've heard those. They're like little gremlins hiding in your tracks, so the pop filter helps with that. Keeps things clean.
Exactly. It's like a shield, diffusing that air before it hits the mic.
Yeah.
It's a simple solution to a common problem, and honestly, it's a must-have for any vocal setup.
Okay, so we've covered mic type, polar patterns, mic placement, pop filters. Is there anything else we need to think about when it comes to our recording space?
We can't forget room treatment. Even with a great mic and perfect technique, a bad recording environment can ruin everything.
Ah, you're talking about those acoustic panels you see in studios.
Yep. Those aren't just for decoration.
I always wondered what those were all about. They look cool, but what do they actually do?
They control sound reflections, minimize that unwanted reverb. When sound bounces off hard surfaces in a room, like walls, floors, ceiling, it creates reflections that can make your recording sound muddy and unclear.
So like it's echoing all over the place.
Exactly. And acoustic panels, they absorb those reflections, so you get a cleaner, more controlled sound.
So they're like sonic sponges, soaking up all the bad stuff?
Pretty much. Think
Yeah.
about it like trying to have a conversation in a busy restaurant versus a quiet library.
Ooh, I like this analogy.
In the library, with all those soft surfaces, you can hear everything clearly. But in the restaurant, it's noisy, everything echoes, it's hard to focus.
That makes total sense. So how do we apply that to recording? Do we have to like cover our entire room in fancy acoustic panels?
You don't have to go that crazy, but you can make a big difference just by placing them strategically. Focus on where sound is most likely to bounce around, like corners, the wall behind your mic, the ceiling above you.
So like if I'm singing facing a wall, I'd want panels on that wall to absorb the sound bouncing back.
Exactly. And corners are important too, because that's where those low frequencies tend to build up.
So you don't need a ton of money to get a better sound. You just got to be smart about it.
Exactly. You can even get creative. Hang some blankets, put up a tapestry. Even bookshelves can help break up sound waves.
That's awesome. You don't need a fancy studio to improve your sound. But we've talked about the gear, the space. What about the most important part, the voice itself?
I could agree more. The microphone is just a tool. It's all about capturing the voice. And that's where vocal technique comes in.
So we've got the right mic, we've set up our space, and now we got to make sure our voices are ready to go.
You got it. Vocal technique is a whole other world, but some key things are breath control, warm-up exercises, posture, and knowing your range.
Sounds like a topic for another deep dive. But for now, what are some simple things singers can do to get their voices ready for recording?
Warming up is crucial. It's like stretching before a workout. It gets your vocal cords ready to work.
So no more rolling out of bed and straight into the booth.
Probably not the best idea. Even simple things like humming, lip trills, scales, they can make a big difference. And breath control is huge. It helps you maintain a steady tone and avoid getting tired.
I bet posture is important too, right?
Oh, definitely. Good posture helps your breath flow freely and supports those vocal cords.
Like imagine trying to sing with a weight on your chest. No thanks.
Right. And speaking of singing well, you got to know your vocal range. The highest and lowest notes you can comfortably sing. That way you can choose songs that suit your voice and avoid straining yourself.
Makes sense. Don't want to force it. So it's all about working with your voice, not against it. Man, this has been so insightful. We've covered so much. Mics, patterns, placement, the room, and now the voice itself. It's crazy how much goes into a good vocal recording.
It's a lot, but when you understand all the pieces, you can really take control of your sound. You can create recordings that truly capture your voice.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This has been an incredible deep dive. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling ready to go make some music. Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. We've talked mics, we've talked recording spaces, even touched on vocal technique. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired to actually go record something now.
It's amazing, isn't it, how much there is to learn about something that seems so simple on the surface.
I know, right? Like you think a microphone, you think sing into it, but there's so much more to it.
And the best part is, knowing all this stuff, it helps you make better choices, get a better sound, no matter what your budget is or how experienced you are.
Exactly. It's not just about having the most expensive gear. It's about knowing how to use what you have and making decisions that work for your voice, your style.
Remember those questions we talked about earlier? Those self-assessment ones from the article?
Yeah, those are good.
Those weren't just about gathering info. They were about getting you to think critically about what you need. What kind of space are you working in? What are your strengths and weaknesses as a vocalist? What kind of sound are you going for?
So it's like knowing the difference between a cardioid and a figure-8 pattern doesn't magically make you a better singer, but it gives you more control, you know? You're making choices, not just guessing.
Exactly. You're not just a singer anymore. You're a sound sculptor. You're shaping your voice, creating a sonic landscape that's totally unique.
Ooh, I love that. It's not just recording, it's creating an experience. And that brings us to a question for you, our listener. Think about it. If you could magically improve one thing about your vocal recordings, what would it be?
Would you want a perfect recording space, like zero noise, zero reverb? Would you want access to any microphone in the world, no matter the cost? Or maybe it's something even deeper than that, something within yourself that you'd like to change.
Maybe it's confidence. Maybe it's understanding your own style better. Maybe it's the ability to really convey emotion through your voice. Whatever it is, hold on to that vision.
Let it guide you, inspire you to push those boundaries, because the journey to great recordings doesn't end with picking a mic. It's about learning, growing, discovering your voice as an artist.
That's beautiful. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder those possibilities. Happy recording, everyone.